Welcome to this recap of Game 2 of the FIDE World Championship 2023. Ian Nepomniachtchi and Ding Liren. Now Game 1 ended in a draw. So in this game, Ding Liren has the white pieces. And well, I'm just going to dive right into it. Because the interesting moment comes very early. So Ding opened with d4. Not a big surprise. You know, he likes to play the English, d4. Knight f6 by Nepo, c4, e6, knight f3, everything pretty standard here, and one would expect white to, well, either go for g3, some Catalan, which I believe Ding has done, or some knight c3, regular Queen's Gambit stuff, but no, he goes h3, and this immediately sent the chess world into quite a shock, because in this position there are about 13 or 14 moves that white has played before playing h3. You know, there's knight c3, there's bishop f4, bishop g5, g3, e3, b3, queen b3, all kinds of moves. So h3 immediately is just a complete shock here, and essentially a novelty. There are some games I found in the database. There was nobody rated above 2000 that had ever played this. I found 2 games by players over 2000, but those were Title Tuesday, online games. So no classical games with a player above 2000. And well, that makes sense, because the move doesn't really do anything. It's not, you know, it's not preparing something, it's not preventing anything, it's not developing anything. I mean, white's idea is not to play g4 here. So essentially it's just a waiting move. And it plays a little bit into, I guess Ding said, maybe a little bit of trash talk. He said, you know, he thinks he's a better player, he has better understanding of chess than Nepo, and he should be high rated. So playing h3 here indicates he's playing a waiting move. He's saying, okay, we could argue that you're kind of playing white here, because I just gave you a free move. But this is not what you play with white. So I will just have a better understanding. And maybe there are some nuances in some lines, there have to be. But this reeks of, you know, Regis Rapport being a second here. I mean, this must be his idea, and there must be some idea somewhere. But let's see what happened. After the initial shock, Nepo took on c4, d takes c4. e3, c5, and we have the Queen's Gambit accepted. Except white has spent this tempo move here. Now, in sort of the Queen's Gambit complex, white very often, back down here, tries to, well, first of all, take in one move with the bishop. There are lines where black tries to make white make a move with the bishop, such as like bishop to d3, and then takes on c4, and white has to take in 2 moves. But at the moment, h3 is kind of a wasted move. So castles, knight c6, standard move here, knight c3, b5, bishop retreats to d3, bishop b7, and now a4. And I think Anish Giri mentioned there's a line where white goes a3 in these lines, and then goes a4, loses the tempo. And that is exactly in this line with knight a5. So compared to that line, white has indeed all of a sudden gained a move, because compared to that line, he has h3 for free. But what's the use of h3? Not really much. So I would argue it doesn't make any difference whatsoever. I mean, I don't imagine white ever having to worry about black going knight g4. So here is kind of the first critical position. Black played knight a5 and white to move. And the move that Ding played, knight takes f6, is considerably less good than what the computer wants to do, which is to take on c5. So white kind of has these 2 choices. There's pressure on the knight. You can take here or take here. And this seems like definitely the better choice, to take on c5. Black probably has to take to win back the pawn. Oops, mouse slip. Has to take here to win back the pawn. Knight d7. And black probably doesn't have any problems, but I think white is definitely for choice. And white can never be worse. You know, maybe c6, let black win the pawn there, and then queen e2, get the pieces into the game. And white has the bishop pair, maybe something to play for in the future. But Ding went for knight takes f6. Pawn takes f6. e4 takes the center, but now comes this move, c4. And this is surprisingly effective. Surprisingly effective. The bishop has to retreat to c2 because we have to keep control of this e4 pawn. And now queen c7. And the black position, you know, the knight sort of makes sense all of a sudden because he's protecting this pawn. And this pawn wall, it's very hard for white to breach this. And black's pieces sort of find good squares. You know, the rook will come to the half open file. Bishop is fine. This bishop might have a future here. And black will just castle queenside. And because of, you know, how well these pawns are protected, this one is protected as well. And the difficulty for white to break this down, the king will actually be quite safe on the queenside despite, you know, not really having a traditional pawn shelter right in front of it. So it already looks like Ding is struggling here. On move 15, bishop d2. It's not clear where white is breaking through, and when you don't have pawn breaks, it's so hard to play in chess. I mean, d5 doesn't seem to be on the agenda, and black will probably just take it, and e5 just opens up for the bishop. So one is wondering, where does white's play come from here? Rook g8, rook c1, lining up against the queen here, maybe hinting at some pressure on the c-pawn, but Ding just castles, Nepo just castles. So now you have this lineup of pieces, but it doesn't really matter. As we'll see, bishop d3. Tempting, but this turns out to be a flawed move because it's not really threatening anything. And Nepo simply played king to b8. Get out of the way of the c-file. And now he's saying, okay, you played bishop d3. Your plan must have been to take on c4. But Ding didn't. He played rook e1. And now if he takes, we take back. And we can win the win the knight back with either b3 or queen e2. If b3, black is happy. We take the e-pawn, and this opens up for our dangerous bishop. So white will probably try to win it back like this, queen e2, but then comes rook c8, and okay, now it looks like, okay, maybe a good version, we're going to win this. But black can take on d2. This looks like a very good position for black. Takes, and rook takes. And now with f5 being threatened, black's pieces will actually be very active, very well placed, and white will struggle to hold the balance here. For instance, if you take this pawn, I think d5 is probably the best move here. Or queen f4, but let's say you take this pawn. You know, look at how coordinated black's pieces are. You know, you have the c-file for this rook, half open file here, very secure bishop here, protected by a pawn. This guy's protecting, you know, can get a good square on d6. And what is white doing? So rook e1, and a very powerful move now by Nepo, f5. Striking at the center, and Ding retreated, bishop to c2. And again, this shows how flawed bishop d3 was. If you have to play bishop d3 and then retreat the bishop, something went wrong. But the reason is, you can't take on f5. If you do, beautiful shot here, rook takes d4. All the pieces that are lined up on the d-file are suddenly targets, and you can't take on d4 because rook takes g2. King here, the queen comes in, checkmate immediately. So we go here, and it might look like we can defend, but we can't. Rook takes f2, it would be a double rook sacrifice. You have to take it, queen h2, and now this conglomeration of pieces are simply in the way. King e3, bishop h6, a beautiful type of checkmate. Reminds me of a very nice game that Bobby Fischer played, where he sacked his queen on f4, and the big idea was landing a big bishop check on h6. So well, actually, that would have been quite beautiful. But of course, Ding saw this, and that's why he retreated, bishop to c2. But now it's actually all downhill. Now the knight on a5 comes back into the game. Huge pressure on white's center here. All the black pieces are kind of coordinating here. Bishop g5. And Nepo seems right at home in these positions, and he doesn't take the foot off the gas here. Rook takes g5. Computer really likes this one. We give up the exchange, but the black pieces are so powerful here. For the moment, we have one pawn for the exchange. But black's pieces, like I said, you know, this beautiful bishop, this bishop can come here, the rook to g8. The pressure will become a bit unbearable. And most importantly, white's pieces are bad. This bishop, no scope, limits the rook. This doesn't have much to do. The queen is in the line of fire. That's why Ding moved it away, queen h5. But simply f6, hitting the knight. Probably he had to take here. But do you really want to do that? Black has a pleasant choice, maybe even bishop c5, and then rook g8, or queen here immediately. And that's just big pressure here. Very difficult position. But knight f3, well, it made things kind of easy for Nepo here. He took on c2, bishop takes e4, and just look at these beautiful bishops. They're dominating the board, and the pawn mesh protects the bishops, stops the scope of the white pieces. So white is actually in a world of hurt here. Bishop d6, king h1, getting out of the immediate threat, which was to take and give a check here. But now black can just start pushing one of these pawns, the c pawn, and that's just too much. After rook d4, c2, we have to protect this square, so queen h6, but now e5. It turns out we don't have a good square for this rook. They're all taken, and this one blocks the queen. So Ding resigned. Simply a horrible game, loses with the white pieces, and one has to wonder, you know, about the mental state, about the mindset of Ding. He, yeah, like we mentioned after the first round, he said that, you know, his mind wasn't there. He didn't prepare the game before the first game. He felt like, you know, yeah, he couldn't concentrate. Mind wasn't there. You know, I'm rooting for Ding. I'm not gonna lie. You know, he's a nice kid, humble kid. You know, the money he earns, he gives to his mother. He's not spending, you know, big money on unnecessary things. So just a nice kid that likes to play chess. Happens to be the #3 chess player in the world. Maybe world champion, but if he wants to become world champion, then he needs to use the rest day well and get his head in it. So this could either be a very lackluster World Championship match, or this is just the beginning. Let's hope so. And well, tomorrow's rest day, and then we'll see you for game 3.